welcome to the CNCF Tag Contributor Strategy Governance Working Group meeting for June 1st. This is an official meeting of the CNCF, and therefore under the CNCF Code of Conduct, for both Dave and Victor, like I said, the primary emphasis of this meeting is going to be on governance issues and discussions, and there's a lot of that in the agenda. I mean, that said, we also do some general tag business in these meetings as well, since we only have one, one or two, depending on the mentoring meeting schedule, tag meetings per week. And speaking of that, I actually want to start with some general tag business, which is, all of you are aware that we sadly and unexpectedly lost our tech lead, Carolyn, in a recent car accident a few weeks ago. And in her absence, two people have actually stepped up to take on responsibilities for things that she was doing. And as a result, Dawn and Catherine and I wanted to nominate those two people to both become tech leads of Tag Contributor Strategy. And those two people would be Ali Okay and Ryan, with them kind of dividing responsibilities. And again, once you have to replace somebody, you find out exactly how much they were doing. So after talking to both Ali and Ryan, they would be more or less dividing it up with Ali being in charge of the website, and Ryan being on top of the roadmap and GitHub mechanics, both of which sort of fall under tech lead responsibilities. And I just wanted to do this at an official meeting so that we can then proceed to the next step, which is submitting the nomination to the TOC for their verification.
I am 100% in support of both of these nominations. Thank you both for stepping up in a difficult time and helping out.
Yeah, happy to help.
It is a pleasure. Unfortunately, I am having technical issues as the technical help with my Zoom, but I'm here.
Yep.
No worries. Happens to all of us at some point.
Okay. And okay. So I will follow up with that for the next steps, which is to first, notify our TOC liaisons, and if they have no objections, then submit that to the TOC. So, okay. So next up, Dawn, governance review requests.
Yeah, so we've gotten a few of these that I don't think we've done, and I don't think we've got a lot of stuff on the agenda for this meeting, so I don't think this is I don't think we need to dive necessarily into any of these. But what we might want to talk about is kind of our approach for addressing these. I know that there's, Josh, you had some concerns around Istio and concerns around wanting to freeze the governance before the graduation announcement.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what's going on with that, and just maybe we can come up with some next steps for who's going to start what, so that we make sure we don't drop any of these.
Yeah. So I want to jump in with Istio because Istio is a little odd. So a governance review is not yet a formal requirement of graduation, right? That said, for every project up for graduation, the TOC has been asking us for a review, since we mentioned that we could potentially do that, except for Istio. We did not do a review of Istio's governance when they joined the CNCF, and we were not asked to do a review for their graduation. And the thing is, as somebody who's been occasionally involved with the project, I know that their existing governance structure has a lot of legacy stuff from when they were a Google-owned project. So, I mean, I will say, as governance working group, I'm a little troubled that the review was regarded as wholly unnecessary. One of the other things sort of contributing to that is a while ago there was a discussion in the TOC, discussion on GitHub in the TOC, talking about how they wanted to have a soft requirement that any new governance be in place for a year before applying for graduation. Now, what the TOC was specifically thinking about is projects that had no written governance at all and adopted it like a week before applying for graduation. And the reason they were worried about that is that actually happened. And the thing is, if you've only had the new governance for a week, there's no telling whether or not it's actually appropriate for your project, or whether or not you're going to be able to actually use that governance as documented. And particularly when the governance was being put into place in order to satisfy some of the hard requirements, like the ability of people to advance in the project regardless of employer. You kind of need to see it working. But this was taken by more than one project, including Istio, as you must not make any changes, even punctuation, to your governance for a year before you apply for graduation, which was not the intention at all. On top of which, the particular PR was never merged, so this was always just a discussion with the TOC. But I've heard that interpretation from at least 2 projects, and so we need to sort of clarify that, which is going to become completely different anyway, because the TOC is moving to require minimal governance documentation at CNCF acceptance. That is, before you get accepted to the CNCF, whether it's a sandbox or incubating, one of the required bits of project paperwork is actually going to be having like a governance MD or similar file that describes at least a lightweight governance. And so that means that would change the character of any sort of governance review or perspective on governance at graduation, right? Because theoretically, no project should be going into a graduation application with brand new governance, because they'll have had governance for their entire duration in the CNCF. So they might be going into it with evolved governance, but that's a different story. Something we want to have happen. So getting back to Istio, we still want to do the governance review, even if it's not being used as a requirement for graduation.
Mhm.
Because I know, both from my own personal knowledge and from some members of the Istio project coming to me, that their existing governance has a lot of legacy stuff in it. And a set of recommendations from us will help their steering committee advance and evolve their governance. So we're still going to do that. I'm happy to go through that. I'd like to have someone else on that who doesn't have my previous involvement with the Istio project, just because some of my review will be based on being very close to the project.
Mhm.
And I want to have a little bit more objectivity. So if anybody's up for that. So basically, what I would write out a bunch of recommendations, and then somebody else would actually review them before we submit them to the project.
How much experience does that person need to have?
You have to have done governance for a CNCF project, like really any project.
Sure.
Well,
Okay.
let me propose something, Josh.
Yeah.
Why don't you take the pen on Istio, write up your
Yeah.
recommendations in a HackMD file,
Mhm.
and then anybody who's interested can review those recommendations and provide feedback to you, and then we'll cycle back before we post those publicly for the Istio project. Because I think, you know, Dave, if you're interested in getting involved in governance, reading and providing feedback on Josh's review, I think would be really just sort of an educational way to see the kinds of things that we do in some of these reviews. So it'd be a good kind
Yeah,
of
totally.
way to get a little more involved.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. I
And-
mean, even if what I said had no weight, it'd be interesting just to learn it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and also you can supply some extra perspective from a perspective of new potential contributor, if you follow me. That is, hey, imagine I was looking at contributing to Istio today, you know, based entirely on what I can find on GitHub. What would the experience be like?
Sure, that makes sense.
Because that's one of the things that we look at, right? Because a project can actually have good operational governance, but if the documentation is incredibly confusing, it's still a problem. So okay. Notary governance.
What? Sorry, Josh, what I was going to suggest on that, we can almost have a bit of a shadow program going to, which I think is more or less what Dawn said.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Because we really do need to have more people involved in working on the governance, because it has been primarily Josh and I for a long time, and Josh has been kind of one of the leads for this working group since it was formed. And
yeah, I mean that's why I'm here, is you guys have said that in other facets, and it's like, all right, well, I'll just show up and see what I can do.
Yeah. So I think in particular, sort of we can take kind of, Rian, that's a good point. We can take kind of a shadowing approach to some of these recommendations, because I think that these are probably a good way to get a feel for what we do, and just start to learn more about it.
Yeah, and I think if we're doing shadowing, I need to actually complete a basic template outline for the review, which is just be based on what we've been including in previous reviews.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Well, in that
although
case,
that'll be a little bit back and forth, because I'm still trying to decide how to indicate, because like sometimes this review is being done before graduation. In the future, it might be being done before acceptance. And we need to come up with, we want to both make the review make sense in terms of the different parts of project governance. But at the same time, we want to flag some things as must be fixed and other things as, you know, this is something you should be working on long term.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you the action item on that. The notary one is a little bit complex, and I think they've made some changes, and then they've moved a bunch of things around, and their governance docs are now under their .github folder in the repository. So they've done some, as far as I'm concerned, maybe slightly strange things that Emily flagged as, hey, you really need to talk to TAG Contributor Strategy about the changes you've just made. I don't know if you had any other thoughts on that, Josh.
Yeah, I've been largely, that was one where I've been staying out of it until we get a formal request from the TOC.
Okay.
Just because, you know, that project had the breakup between Notary and Tough, and there's been a bunch of people involved who have some animosity towards each other.
Yes.
And I didn't really want to jump into that. Yeah, okay. I didn't want to jump into that without a sort of formal role. So Emily is actually asking us there, or more importantly, they're asking the project to ask us.
Yes.
Um,
So should we wait for the project to ask us?
Yeah, or just provide contact information. If I'd noticed this yesterday, I would have actually put the meeting information in here. But I am still behind in my GitHub notifications.
Yeah, I saw it actually because I couldn't remember where it had come in. It took me like 15 minutes to find it in Slack. And I just found it this morning, so it was kind of too late. Okay, but I'll give myself the action item to update the issue with contact information. Okay. And then telepresence has also requested a review. I think this is the most recent one. This actually came in yesterday.
Okay.
They're moving from sandbox to incubation. And they haven't actually done the PR for the due diligence doc for incubation, but they wanted to get a jump start on the governance review. Do you want me to start that one since you're starting the Istio one?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Did I miss any things that have asked for our review? Are there any others? I didn't look super closely, but those were the ones I remembered seeing. I just want to make sure we don't fall down on those. This will be a lot easier once we start using the project board. See next agenda item. So maybe we should just, sorry, I'm not running the meeting, but maybe we should just move to the next agenda item since we've got a lot of agenda.
Okay. Yeah, in that case, project board, and presume this is Rian.
Yes, I added that. So I'll be project board cat herder for this meeting. So what I've done is.
Do you want to share your screen, Rian? Would that be helpful?
I could, yes.
You don't have to, but that might help.
I'm going to share. Let me just get that guy. I'm having Zoom issues and I'm using the web interface now, so now it's going to be hard. So if somebody else want to share the board, it would be good. I hope I didn't break my Zoom now.
I can share my screen if that would be helpful. I was just giving myself a to-do item for the telepresence review, so I don't forget it. All right, let me just open it in another browser so that I can share that. Oh,
sorry.
I'm sorry. I can't share it. I've got an admin message on GitHub for one of the orgs that I'm an admin on, and I can't share anything on GitHub right now. So someone else, sorry, it just popped up. There's a payment issue with a org, and I can't. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, I just broke my Zoom by trying to share because my Zoom is buggy.
Dave, thank you so much.
There you go. I helped. All right.
Thank you. All right. So what I've done here is if we go to our specific one for governance, our tag at the top for governance. So basically the way I've set up the board is all issues at the moment live in new. So the idea is running the board. When an issue appears, it should automatically load in new. I'm still struggling to get that automation working, but we will sort that out. So then every meeting, we just have to groom the new column at least and stick them in backlog that we acknowledge it's 8 hours, it's tagged, we want that, and we stick it in backlog. So the easy thing today is just move everything that is either still, that is all valid, move it into backlog, or if it's assigned or some ways down the road, we can move it further on, but I at least want to move all of them into backlog. So the one question And going back to my agenda, so the one question is all of these tickets still valid? So we must determine if there's stale tickets, close them if need be. And then there's tickets that's assigned to people and determine if the assignments is still valid. And if it's too much assigned to one person, we can remove the assignments and then just stick it in backlog. So it's just clear where we are and what's being looked at and whatnot.
I don't seem to be able to make any changes. I was just trying to change status in a couple of these, and I seem to be read only somehow.
Yes, the board is. You should have CNC rights to be able to write to the board. It wasn't public, so I may. Nate made it public for us. He have the correct right. So I'm not sure. I don't have very privileged rights, but I actually have access to this board to create it. So I'm not sure.
It's interesting because I was able to just change status, and I wouldn't think I would have any kind of permissions.
Oh, this is odd.
Yeah.
But I don't do a ton of stuff in CNCF Git. I mean, I'm on like, you know, I'm like a contact for our org. So maybe because of that I do, but.
Yeah, no, I am strictly read only. I can't change anything. So, you know,
are you GitHub signed in, Josh?
Yeah, you know, Robert was just doing a bunch of things to change how our permissions are managed in the repo, and I wonder if he broke something. So we need to follow this up by working with Robert Keelty to see, you know, permissions for the board.
I think I'm in the same situation Josh is. When I open one of these up and click on the edit button, nothing happens.
I am able to move them. So if you want
I can't move things around either.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very weird. The people with the governance people can't move the governance forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this has to do with the changes that Robert just made. So we're gonna have to work with Robert and figure out what it was that got broken.
Yeah.
So if you want to, I can be your hands, and Josh and Dawn, if you want to talk through them from the top and just tell me where we move it.
Okay. Well, let me before we. Before we go through that, because that could easily take until the end of the meeting.
Yes.
Let's skip ahead and deal with a couple of other agenda items. And then
maybe it's a rule.
And then come back
everybody
to that.
Right. Everybody can just,
because one thing is
whatever comes up every week
if
in front of the
if I can get my
meeting.
permissions fixed, then I can blow through a bunch of those cards like instantly. And so I kind of think that our immediate follow-up is to actually figure out what's broken about permissions. So okay. Suggested improvements to the incubating graduated levels. So Dawn?
Yeah, so this one I'm not sure how we want to deal with this issue. So this is something that it seems like, if I remember correctly, that the TOC is kind of waiting for us to do. And we have had a lot of people volunteer to help out with it. Dave being one of them. And I think that Dave is the only person who's volunteered to help out with it who's actually involved in the tag. It's a bunch of sort of people. There are a couple of people who have volunteered to help out, who have very specific ideas about how this should work. And so I'm a little bit reluctant to ask one of them to lead it, even though they keep volunteering, because I don't know, it feels like the person that leads this needs to be somebody who can facilitate all of the various opinions, not be
Mhm.
the person with the strongest opinion in the room. Just
Yeah.
to be perfectly blunt about this one. And so what's happened is a bunch of people have volunteered and people keep volunteering. And then I just don't know what we need to do to progress this one. I feel like it's stalled.
Well, I also feel like the mission of the working group or whatever we're calling it is not actually clear. Like, it kind of feels like it's hey, we want you to form a working group around anybody who wants to make changes to the existing progression for any purpose. And that's a little too vague of a mission to have any success criteria.
Mhm.
So I actually feel like the next steps are to go back to Emily, et cetera, and clarify exactly what the mission of this working group is. The other thing was I was talking because we have a kind of an issue with leadership, right? Because as you pointed out, the people who are volunteering to run this are volunteering to run it because they already have very strong opinions.
Mhm.
And we don't want a working group that's devoted to just the disgruntled. So there was actually a suggestion that we have a member of staff facilitate the working group, since they can be regarded as completely neutral.
Mhm.
But with one event or another, we haven't been able to actually figure out what member of staff that would be. So I think we can actually go back with two things, which is one is we can go back to Emily and try to get, because this is something the TOC is asking for, to get a clear, sort of set of goals for the working group. And because maybe other people feel differently. Right now, I don't feel like I have there's a clear set of goals.
Yeah.
And the second thing is to continue to talk with staff and see the possibility of staff actually facilitating the working group.
Okay. Dave, I feel like you're one of the people that volunteered to help out with this. I suspect that you are not one of the people with a very strong opinion of exactly how this needs to happen. And
Correct. I have zero strong opinions.
So what I'm wondering is if maybe you can help us by working with Emily and seeing if we can maybe get this better scoped so that we know exactly what we're trying to accomplish. And feel free to pull, Josh and I and anybody else into those conversations. And Josh, is there somebody that we should talk to at the CNCF about possibly getting a staffer to lead this? So what I'm thinking is maybe we can get Dave to shepherd this long enough for us to figure out what we need, get someone from the CNCF to possibly help, and make sure that we don't fall behind on this.
Yeah, the reason why nobody's jumping forward to this is that this working group is going to be a huge time suck for whoever's involved, right? They're going to have a whole bunch of meetings, a lot of meetings.
And it's going to be like the annual HOA meeting where everyone just brings their biggest complaints. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And that's one of the reasons why I'm not saying, oh, hey, Dave, you said you were interested. Why don't you lead it? Because
no.
You're getting involved with this working group and you're running Maintainer Circle.
And by the way,
would effectively take you away from that.
I'm officially Director of Developer Relations at Ambassador Labs, not just Senior Dev Advocate, because Daniel moved on and I'm there, which is
congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. And yes, no, there's also a reason I didn't go like, hey, I'll facilitate it.
Yeah.
Because
But
from
do you have the time?
I
to
feel
help us?
comfortable, yeah, like trying to move it along. Like I think
Okay.
like facilitating it happening is
Yeah.
definitely within my time availability. But yes,
Okay.
when I volunteered to help with it, I was more picturing being in the meetings rather than running
Yeah.
them. Also because I am recently got forced to again be on the HOA of the board of my HOA, and so I can only deal with 2 of these kinds of meetings per year.
Yeah, but I think if we can get this better scoped, like what's in scope, what's out of scope, and if we can get a CNCF staffer to help us by leading this, I think that then we can just sort of hand it over to the CNCF staffer to kind of set up the meetings and participate as we can. But I just want to make sure that we get this started.
Yeah, I'm happy to reach out to Fox and see if we can get it
Okay.
better scoped and see if we can get it to happen for sure.
Cool.
Okay. Okay, so that gives us some sort of next steps there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, what do we have there? We took civs out as the recommendation.
Yeah, and
Well,
when
no, we do recommend Electo as one of several choices.
yes, but
So
not
And
the choice.
yeah, I would only put it in as the choice, A, if we actually finish the current Electo major roadmap items.
Mhm.
And B, once the CNCF staff says they are ready to deploy an Electo for any project that wants it.
Okay, yeah, I was curious about that part actually. So right now, for example, for Kubernetes for or Knative, where do we have Electo deployed?
It's running in the Red Hat open source lab.
Oh, okay.
It's not being hosted by CNCF. So basically right now, in terms of the hosted instances I'm familiar with, right, we have Kubernetes runs its own because Kubernetes has a huge internal infrastructure. We have 2 projects that are running in the Red Hat open source lab because we set up an OpenShift template for it, and so Red Hat OSPO can deploy one pretty easily. But there's an issue there, right? Red Hat is one vendor among several, and sometimes when you have Red Hat people who are actually running for leadership positions, people could feel not comfortable with Red Hat hosting it. And one hosted by Open Infra actually for their own use. Yeah, so like it should become the primary recommendation once CNCF is officially hosting it. But I don't think we can do that before then.
Okay.
And we would still mention the others as alternate possibilities because
Yeah.
Electo is very opinionated and that might not suit how they want to run their election.
Okay, so this is like, I thought about this because once I was involved with Knative election, I thought, okay, what are the other projects doing? I checked a couple and yeah, they're like doing in emails or basically hand raising or something like that.
Yeah.
So is this something that I can try to push, you think, for like to CNCF? Hey, why don't we host this at CNCF level instead of Red Hat or instead of
Yeah.
Kubernetes infra? Or
yes. However, per our earlier discussion, I already know what that's waiting on, right? Which is staff time availability. As in that will eventually be probably Robert's responsibility on the staff. But he is still digging himself out of like a 1.5-year backlog of tickets and stuff that got backlogged because we're still, the CNCF is still dealing with the fact that Ihor is still in the Ukrainian army. So uh, so it's basically kind of waiting on that. And I have a feeling it'll get pushed ahead when they decide they want to use Electo for, say, one of the award elections, and therefore need to actually have it hosted. Or
So-
when Robert gets out of the backlog of sort of urgent stuff.
Okay, but is this already in their backlog, or do you know if it's already in their backlog?
Yeah.
Or I can
I
go
think
and
so. I don't
create-
have any ability to see their ticket queue because it's
Okay.
in Jira, right?
Okay, I can just go and create a ticket somewhere.
Okay.
I don't know where, maybe in TLC repository or here
No,
on.
you'd that's a good
Probably not.
question. That would be a good question. And it would be a good question basically to ask the staff. Just
Okay.
say, hey, Robert, I know you can't get to this yet, but if we're going to create a ticket of this should be hosted, should we do it on GitHub or should we do it in Jira?
Okay, yeah, okay.
The
I'll-
so because I know most of the stuff that he's working on is in Jira because they're requests from various project maintainers. The
Okay,
but also I want to get through, I want to attack some of the to-do list on Electo as well. Although at this point, there is nothing on the to-do list that requires a database change, which is the thing that makes upgrades more than just an automatic image redeployment. So, I mean, theoretically, it should upgrade its own database, but I will admit that we don't actually have tests for the database upgrade. So I don't have 100% confidence in that code. But none of the stuff on our to-do list involves the database upgrade, so it should be just image replacement. It's just that it would be better to knock out some of the to-do list items as well before we start advertising, before we start really pushing on the projects that they should consider moving to Electo, if they don't have a preference elsewhere. And I have plans for those, which is like in the next, say, LFX cycle, get a couple of
okay, so
mentees,
before
work on some of the
asking,
major tasks. Yeah.
so before asking, should we wait then until these issues are resolved? Do you think they're critical?
No, figure out where to put it in the backlog,
Okay,
because they're not going to get to it immediately, and we might as well get it in the queue.
okay.
And obviously people can use Electo right now, right? The issues in Electo are mainly issues of usability. And for that matter, the alternatives have their own bits of clunkiness.
Okay. So I did something for
Like-
me in the document now.
Like I think
Yeah,
I think the Helios GitHub ID plugin can only be used if you're self-hosting or something, but the okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
that's for the info. Yeah, I think
Yep.
I got enough information for now. We also had
Yeah.
some chat in the beginning of the
Okay.
meeting.
Yep. And diverse backgrounds.
Yeah, the last one. So I actually thought this is like the general tag meeting, and I was adding this. This is really not relevant to governance, but it was just so this is to raise awareness or ask for feedback, basically, in that PR about that comment, actually. So in mentoring working group, when we were working about working on the selection criteria for Google Summer of Code, we were discussing how to do something like encourage people from diverse backgrounds and people from underrepresented groups, like encourage them. But yeah, this is probably a wider topic, and I was curious if you know anything about these topics, like in CNCF in general. I know the code of conduct, which says like respect and everything, but it doesn't actually mean like an additional encouragement or something. So I was curious what your opinions on this, and basically it doesn't have to be now, but I would be happy if you can have a look at the comment on the PR. Yeah, that's all.
So. The, okay, I mean, I would say my suggestion, first of all, would be if you want to specifically attack the diversity issue, let's split that out into a separate PR.
Yeah.
The, because that's its own huge sort of ball of wax. Because it, you know, and then we'll discuss the rest during mentoring, because there will be a bunch of prerequisites, right? Because we have a sort of de facto working policy to try to select diverse candidates in LFX, for example. But we don't actually have demographics about the candidates.
Yeah.
So if you wanted it to be a policy, you'd have to start adding a questionnaire for each candidate. And then you'd need all of the PII privacy stuff around that as well. So,
so that would
I
be,
think this needs to be like a major discussion in mentoring.
yeah, exactly. And that would also need probably some legal review and stuff like that. So it's not a small thing, but just curious.
Yeah.
And
it's going to vary by each program. I mean, one of the things that's been on our to-do list forever is to get somebody to volunteer to be in charge of CNCF project involvement for Outreachy. Because Outreachy has, in fact, the goal of only including diverse candidates.
Yep.
And process around making that happen. But Outreachy is more hands-on than the other programs in terms of both the administrator, particularly for administration. And as a result, we haven't really been actively participating since the last person who was running our Outreachy involvement moved on to other things. So I mean, like if we wanted to do something right now, it would be recruit somebody to be in charge of just Outreachy involvement and get a few mentorships spun up there. Because that would add more diverse candidates to the entire pool in advance of figuring out anything for LFX. And of course, we can't really touch the rules for Google Summer Code because those are Google's rules.
Okay. That's good feedback.
So. Okay. So we have 10 minutes. I'm willing to stay on with Ryan and actually try to get some of these cards sorted. Although let me start a chat thread in Slack as well to try to get the permissions fixed.
There is a
I
Rian.
had a
Nope,
Yeah.
go ahead, Rian.
I had a side chat here with Rob about this, and he said that PR that's open, I linked it in the up underneath the AI, and he said that might fix it. I just find it a little odd that everybody can't accept you. So that's his. It is what's the time now? 6 or 8 at 8 o'clock at night is at his place already. So he's probably. He mentioned he's going away from his keyboard now, so I'll follow up some more with him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think I'm probably gonna drop because it's pretty late here.
Yeah.
If I get a chance, I'm gonna be off the next couple of days, but next week, if I get a chance, I'll try to at least clean up some of those issues, which will populate though. If we clean some of those up and close some of them, that will populate the project board, right?
Yeah, that would be helpful. And then if we move, I'll hang out with Joss until the top of the hour. If we can just get all those out of new, and then we'll have a short groom at the beginning of every meeting, just groom the new column.
Yeah, that would be great.
I don't have anything on the agenda because this is not the thing important. I actually heard from Don before about an organization called MetaGov. I actually joined some of the calls, and this is one of the articles they actually discussing about open source governance. I know this is nothing practical, it's also in theory, but I just let you know that I actually mentioned the exciting actual real world governance that's going on in this organization. So, yeah, so just let you know that, and I'll be there studying the serious stuff.
Wait, which organization is this?
It's called a MetaGov. Yeah, one of the research area is about open source governance, governance model, etc. Yeah, so I'm just attending those meetings when I have time to yeah, discuss about those.
Okay, cool. Are they aware of our working group here?
Yeah, I actually mentioned there. I think there's a lot of exciting. I think, yeah, I mentioned CNCF definitely is one of the most well-run organization in the open source community. So governance definitely played a role there. And so, yeah, I just asked, discuss what open source model out there and governance model and works, what doesn't work. Yeah, so that's what's going on in the discussion there.
Okay.
Interesting.
Okay. Well, thanks. And actually, Rian, we'll have to follow this up in Slack now at this point because I actually have another meeting at 11 and I need to get more coffee first.
Oops, you're on mute,
muted.
Leon.
Agree. Let's catch up later, get coffee. I also have a meeting in 5.